Yeah. All right, guys. What is happening? What is happening? Sweet. A really good subject for you guys tonight. So, we're going to talk about assessing your results in a strongman competition. So, this past weekend, I just ran Beast of the Bay number 4, right? And we had a lot of really good, talented athletes in it. I'm super excited, super stoked about how everything went. I had a couple of my own athletes did pretty well. Let's see, who do we have? We had Jessica Yates taking home first in Masters. Great job. Josh Ramsey got third in the middleweight 220. It was a really good show. So what I want to talk about tonight is how to assess your performance. There's really going to be a lot of thoughts on this. And here's the thing. This is kind of like everything in strongman is there's not like one direct path to scoring yourself. But there's a couple elements that I think are important to go over that we're going to cover. So the first thing is just like your overall prep and preparation, right? The first thing you want to think about, when you're assessing how you did in a strongman competition is how was your preparation? And this is not just the days going in, but this is the weeks, the months, and depending on your goals, like the year going in. So for me, and this is something that's allowed me to be very successful, is I have big, like long-term goals. Everybody's goals are big, but mine are very long-term. When I went to official strongman games in 2019, I had a goal to come back the next year and finish in the top 10. So when I have a goal that's that long term, then I also need to assess the preparation that happened over the entire year, right? So my plan of action was that year to get in multiple high-level competitive shows. So I did the Strongman Corp Regionals, I did USS Nationals, and I also did OSG Regionals. So when I'm reviewing my preparation, I'm thinking about all the steps that I made throughout 12 months in order to get there. Now, one thing that I will admit is that I could have done a little better with my conditioning around the year, okay? Just like plain and simple. So these are things to think about. Like, where are you at? Like, did you peak well, right? Really importantly is like, did you do all the conditioning and the recovery that you needed to? And this is things we have to be honest about. But the other thing too is that we shouldn't be obsessed about being optimal. So we want to always be practical first and then optimal. So, maybe you could have, in a perfect world, if it was going to be the best case scenario to, have 4 hard conditioning workouts a week and 5 strength training workouts. Like, is that really something that's practical and sustainable? Like, maybe not. Good, try and find a better marker here. Just hang with me. So rate like how you balanced yourself in the build-up to this. With a lot of things going on in our lives, in strongman, a lot of different things to train more. Like, the ultimate goal of all of this is to just get better and improve. That's a dead marker. So, did you do a good job balancing and managing all of life? When I went into official strongman games 2024, I had traveled to Europe for 2 weeks in the build-up to that. So, like, not everything was going to be under perfect circumstances, right? Like, was your food good? Right? These are just all the things you have to think about. Like, what went well and what do you need to change? So step number 1 is like, how was the preparation, right? Then 2, how were you actually on game day, okay? So, how was your water cut if you had one? How was your mental state going in? And this is an important one. This is one that I really want to cover because you can do all of this perfectly. You can have the perfect peak. You can do your conditioning. You can recover like a pro. You can have the optimal path to whatever it is that you're doing. But if you show up and your mindset is not in the right place, none of this matters. On paper, and I mean this very humbly, I have beaten regularly a lot of people who would outlift me and outperform me in any gym training session. But because I am somebody who's good at being in a flow state and managing my emotions, I tend to have pretty good performances. So I try not to worry too much about a lot of this stuff. Like, okay, maybe I could have pushed the conditioning harder. Maybe I could have prioritized sleep just a little bit better. But, if you are somebody who's able to come in with the right attitude and the right positive mindset where you're managing your emotions, you're confident in your abilities, then this is so, so, so important. I'm not going to name names, but, there's somebody that I've seen at several of my competitions now. Wow, insanely strong, huge. Like, they have the physical genetic build to be a tremendous strongman, but they are a freaking nuisance. They're a pain in the ass. They have a huge ego, and they always underperform, man. And I'm talking about like getting beat by people who are smaller, weaker, and less fit than them. But because they come in thinking that they have all the answers and that people should just kowtow to them and they're rude to their competitors, they never finish on top of the podium. The only time I saw them finish on top of the podium is when they were one of one. So not only did they finish first, but they technically also finished last. So very cool. But when it's time to come to real competitions, if you're a freaking head case, then it's not going to matter, right? The other things that are important on game day are your warm-ups, okay? I'm going to talk about some of my own personal lessons I've learned on this. Warm-ups. These are things that come with more experience. And so something you got to remember is that the people that are the best in this sport do not just show up one day and dominate, right? They do not just go straight to Worlds or straight to a pro show and just wreck everybody. Like, you might see this at a local show, but that is not the same, right? I'm talking about, like, when I went to OSG, everybody was just a pro. I can't tell you enough how amazing it is and how hard it is to understand just how good these guys are. But it's because they have refined their craft. They've been doing it for years. They've done it way longer than me. They've done it way more. So all of these things we're talking about is compounding over and over and over again. Right? What do you need to warm up? You never really know exactly what you're going to have at certain competitions. So you have to just know what's successful to you. I learned, at one point in time, if I'm doing a log press or any overhead event, I need to bring bands with me in my gym bag, because that will guarantee that no matter what equipment is available, I'm going to be able to warm up my legs, my chest, my shoulders, my triceps. I can activate my upper back, because I don't know what plates are available. I don't know what's going to be there. I don't know how many people are doing it. So don't get caught in having a perfect routine in your warm-ups and being totally married to that. You need to go into these competitions with an understanding that you don't really know what's going to be available. But, learn what works for you in different approaches. For some people, just cranking out a bunch of push-ups, or I know people that have done handstand walks and handstand push-ups on the wall for overhead presses at competitions to warm up, and that's what works for them. But you do not know unless you actually get out to a competition and test this out in a live, real situation. So just think about what did I do to warm up for each event, and then how was it as far as was it a success or was it a failure? These are things going into each and every comp now moving forward. You should be able to look and make a plan at the whole entire day. All right, well, this event is first, this event is second, third, fourth, fifth, right? So you should kind of be not married to a plan, but thinking okay, if the day moves pretty quick, here's how I'm going to do this. If the day moves slow, here's how I'm going to do this, right? Because this event was first, I don't need to warm up my back is hard. You know what I mean? So just kind of keep rating these things. So water cut, mental state, warm-ups, and then strategy, right? Like, was your strategy the correct choice for this, right? Because we all have ideas in our head about, what we think is going to work, and then there's the reality of what's actually going to work, or what did or did not work in competition. And like, it's all good. Something I've been saying and putting out online is mistakes are not failures unless you don't learn from them. So I've tried certain things. Like, I'll give you an example. This year at OSG, we have a deadlift ladder coming up. In 2023, I thought I was going to be able to pull the 675 bar without my straps. That was at that point in time, that was the fourth bar in the ladder. So I went, whatever it was like 545, 585, 635, then up to 675. And I got it to my knees, but I just wasn't there and like really locked in all the way. And I had to go to the fifth bar where I had laid my straps down, go retrieve them, come back to the fourth bar. And then I did pull it successfully, but that was a huge energy waste. So I'm not going to even play that game this time, even though I'm stronger. I know at that 675 bar this time, I'm just going to strap in, no problem. So that's an example of like where my strategy is going to teach me and hopefully help me do better. Not hopefully, I'm almost certain it's going to help me do better at this round. So good stuff. But take all of these things at data points. This is like what we want to do is, kind of amass a lot of real live examples of like what's really going on in the moment, because training is important, but it just does not teach you the same as like how you perform under pressure. So at this competition, we had log press as the third event, and that was after a truck push, and it was also after a max deadlift. So when you're in that type of scenario, you just have different abilities than when most people would typically do the log press as the first or second major movement in their workout. So now, having to have tested that under different conditions, you're able to assess and analyze like, well, my legs were really shot, so maybe next time I would do this, right? So just kind of things you gotta be thinking about. So kind of moving on to a different section of this. So this is just kind of game day stuff, but I want to differentiate, what I call execution, okay? So execution, I'm kind of thinking like game day plan and then game day action, right? The first one is like technique, okay? So I saw somebody who was going for their third attempt on deadlifts. They probably had the ability to pull this in strength, but their technique went way out the window. I don't really know why, but it's worth like assessing. If this is what happens to you, it's worth assessing and analyzing like, well, what happened, Did you lose your focus? Did you let your nerves get the best of you? Did you get too excited? Like, these are the things you have to think about. Like, when your technique goes out the window, a lot of times that is your focus being placed somewhere else, or you're just at too high of an adrenaline level to have any focus, okay? So that's a really important one. Like, did your technique hold up, especially under fatigue? Only you can be answering these questions. So, like, nothing I'm telling you is, like, you need to do this, but you do need to, like, be honest and truthful about what went wrong. And sometimes, right, like, it could be a totally different type of log or frame or something like that. And, again, it's data points. Like, you should be analytical and think about, like, well, I normally train on a log that's got thick handles and the handles are out here, but this log had really thin handles, and now it was in here. So knowing that, like, if you have a more narrower handle next time, like, you should scout that in advance, maybe do a little bit more tricep work or do some, something that's going to gear you to success for that. So, right, like technique, conditioning, right? Like, this is actually how you perform on these medleys or these AMRAPs, these as many reps as possible. Like, did your conditioning hold up throughout it? And this is also kind of going hand in hand with strategy, because sometimes when you have big events, there's going to be some that you have the ability to go balls to the wall for, and there's others where you need to be very strategic about like having to pace yourself. So at this competition, we had max reps, 60 seconds, sandbag to shoulder. Then we had a 20-second rest period right into a max distance farmer's carry. So if your conditioning is really good, some of that stuff you can just go, boom, hammer it out. Just absolutely smash it. But for a lot of people, you probably needed to start a little slower on the farmers, or some people took that time and added a little strategic rest. So they took like 10 seconds into their farmers round and then went. So only you can answer these questions. But again, you need to be thinking about, like, did my technique break down? Then I need more focus in my next prep. Was my conditioning suffering? Well, that's one of two things. Again, is that either like adrenaline, or is that you need to condition more, right? And now one thing, again, is kind of a general philosophy on performance is like the more power you can output, the more efficient your movement is. So like if your 1 rep max on a log, let's say it's 300, you're going to more efficiently press 250 than if your log 1 rep max is only 275. So if you're getting to a point where you feel tired after a couple reps on a log, like it's kind of up to you to figure out, like, well, do I need to work on my overall strength, or do I need to work on getting more reps at that weight? But really the answer is both. And the programs you should be doing should be following some sort of path where you are building to a 1 rep max and supporting it with power-based accessories that increase your power output after you've done your heavy work and your overall conditioning. So technique, conditioning, strength. Right? Very simple. Is your strength good enough? Yes or no? What we're trying to decide here is like, what are the biggest like weak points? Because some people are strong as all hell but have very poor technique when it's time to perform. Some people have a lot of strength and technique but have very little conditioning. That's actually a ton of people in strongman that are super strong. Their technique is pretty good, but as soon as they get above 4 reps of anything, it's game over for them. All right. Then pace. I'm going to talk about this one because it's pretty important. If you have technique, conditioning, strength, and your mental state is in a good place, this is really where people take it to the next level. And that is having a really top pace the whole way. So in strongman, the kind of luxury of this is we're only doing things 60 seconds at a time, or in the case of my event, 2 minutes at a time. So once you get to a certain level where like you have enough strength, you are very technically refined, and you are on your conditioning really, really good, then you have to like do things at 100 miles an hour. Okay. Now this comes with like a cost and a risk, because the faster you try to go through things, the higher your chances of making a mistake, and that's okay. But you have to, kind of decide for you, what point in this competition and this event are you at to where you need to worry about just finishing it, or you need to worry about getting like a really, really top score. So like for me right now, like I'll tell you about my own personal journey over the last few years, right? Like the sandbag medley at OSG last year, it was very important that I just finished it without any mistakes. One mistake would have been really, really, really not good. It would have been very not good for me. It would have cost me a lot of points, taken a bunch of time, wasted a bunch of energy. So I just like needed to make sure that I didn't do any drops. But now the game has changed a little bit, where my sandbag technique is so much better. My strength is better. My conditioning is better. So now I have to use these things and just freaking gun it, because I am gunning for a top spot. I am not just gunning for top 10 anymore. I am now gunning for the podium and hopefully the top spot. So it's kind of up to you, but I want you to just be mindful like of pace. If you're somebody that's looking to go to numero uno, which if you're watching this right now, you probably have some interest in that. At some point, you're going to have to use all these things and decide, I have to work harder, okay? Some other things just to kind of think about. I'm not going to go on and on and on and on about this, but, evaluating things such as like the competition as a whole, not just your performance in it, is also pretty important. Like, what do you want and need out of your like strongman and fitness journey? Because sometimes you go to a competition and it's not really something that pushed you. Like, this is where a lot of people get caught up and stuck in doing a lot of local shows, is they're not really getting pushed beyond their comfort zone, even though they're going through like live fire hard rounds. Again, it's like I relate to all this because like this is really what I credit to getting good at this sport, is like pushing myself and learning lessons. OSG 2019, these guys were all pros in every aspect. Like, man, they were just so good. And I learned again that like, kind of coming full circle here, is they're so freaking good and tough because they go against the very best all of the time. When I went to that show, I learned like, wow, these guys are fast, they are strong, they are explosive, they don't make mistakes, or they make very few of them and rebound right away. But if you are only competing at a local show, like, you're probably going to be able to get away with making more mistakes and operating at a slower pace. So get outside your comfort zone, man. And if this competition that you were at doesn't offer that for you, you have to be honest with yourself and say, hey, maybe I got to go find something harder. Maybe I have to go out of my way to get into some really tough, very exposing situations. And like, listen, I understand that's hard because you run the risk of getting your ass kicked, but you're going to get better. Now, there are always different things you can do about that. Maybe your local show is the best option for you, but think about competing up, right? Like, I would like to compete against some heavier and harder classes. I don't mean this in a mean way, but I beat everybody in 80s and 181 in Florida, and it's like not even really close. But what I would do is I would go up to 90 or 198 or 220, because then I would be having to push myself against bigger, stronger, faster, more athletic people. So if you're somebody who went through this show and you weren't really pushed, that has nothing to do about like how you perform. You could have had like the best, most well-executed day of all time and still not have been pushed forward in a way that could have been best for you. So think about the sum totality of like what that event was for you, what your competition was like, and what your goals are, because, maybe if you want to get better, you're going to have to go harder. Some people that are in masters go to open for a bigger challenge. People go up a weight class. There's all sorts of things you can do. So that's really kind of the thing is, always assess your performance, be honest with yourself, and give yourself a real score. Create a long-term plan to address what you need to do to improve on. Don't try to do everything at once, but instead create a plan where you can stack things on top of each other. So, like, again, I can give you examples from me because this has been successful approaches. I needed to improve my overhead pressing. Part of that was addressing mobility, the ability to activate my upper back and utilize my core when I was reaching overhead. So what we did was laid out a system, a plan where we had a lot of like handstand work where I was working my shoulder stability and I was forced to address mobility. There's a lot of core moves like L-sits in there that forced me to activate and turn my core on in a hollow position. We warmed up every single day with T3, trap 3 work to deactivate my upper traps and ignite my low and mid traps, and then took that into cleans and presses. So I had the explosive ability to carry over into overhead work and then transition into log, which took me into PRs. But that was like one thing after another, after another, after another, that was all labeled out. But if I tried to just do all the mobility, all the core, all the log, all the Olympic lifting all at once, it would have just been a complete clusterfuck, and I never would have gotten it done. Simple as. So that's where I'm going to leave you with that, is you need a long-term plan. And if you are looking for all the tools that will help you build that out and get there, join my community. It's free, private strongman info to help you be the very best in the world at clubstrongman.com. Check it out. Thanks for watching, peoples. Have a good night. Peace.